Well, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Josh Schimmels, publisher and CEO of the Los Angeles Business Journal. It's a pleasure to host today's Black Business Matters virtual panel discussion. This is now the third of the series, which was launched last summer. Our first session focused on ways to invest and engage in Black businesses and the importance of mentorship. Our second session focused specifically on women's leadership and the unique challenges faced by Black female executives. If you missed out on either of them, you can view them on our website at labusinessjournal.com. Today, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation as we hear from our experts on diversity, inclusion, and equity, access to capital, access to healthcare, and ways to give back and get more involved in our communities. All right, we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to get started. I'd like to introduce today's speakers from our first panel. Tiffany Jones, Manager, Communications and Strategic Partnerships with One Legacy. Candy Lewis, Chief Executive Officer, Positive Results Center, and Civil and Human Rights Commissioner with the City of Los Angeles. Robert Saucedo, President and Chief Executive Officer of Community Building. And today's moderator, Robert D. Taylor, President and CEO, Sentinella Capital Partners, and partner with 35711. Robert, welcome and thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks to you, Alex, and the whole LA Business Journal team for creating this forum and assembling, as the introductions underscore, a remarkable panel of leaders for this first discussion. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to moderate, as part of this discussion of Black Business Matters, this panel on building community and change. Now, Americans instinctively know that business matters. In fact, said, I think, a century and a half ago, the business of America is business. A recent survey show that among U.S. institutions, business, particularly small business, is the most trusted. It's also the case that 83% of the people in the country with a net worth of $5 million or more are entrepreneurs. Business is the source and the reservoir of wealth. And wealth is the driver of the quality of life and life prospects for a person, a people, and a nation. So as we move into this discussion, let's begin with talking about supporting Black businesses. It should also be a priority to support Black women business owners who experience double discrimination, that is, discrimination on the basis of race and sex. I'd like to address this question to the full panel. How do we combat this? Let's start with you, Robert.
Thank you very much. You know, it's a very important question to ask because Black women represent 42% of all new women-owned businesses. And while they're 3 times the share of the population in that number, 36% of all Black-owned employees. So women employ more Black Americans or African Americans. But a word I'm going to use consistently throughout this presentation is intentionality. We have to be intentional about how we support businesses. We have to hold banking accountable and being intentional in their outreach. Organizations like Bank of America and City National Bank, we have to make sure they ignore the noise when people think they can't be successful, that they help them, organizations like ours, help them think through a strong PR campaign to stay relevant. And of course, they need to develop champions in their own intentionality that are going to help drive their business, whether it's contractual or otherwise.
Well, very good. And we'll all try to keep that word alive because it's intentional about on a number of actions that need to take place in order to support Black businesses. Tiffany, would you like to comment on that question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Robert. And I like intentionality as well, Robert. Asking the question, how to address the Black woman experience and being a woman of color, understanding as a Black woman and being a woman that, let's talk in business and corporate. Many corporations, diversity efforts really focus on gender or race, never the both combined. And so what's needed is visibility of the Black woman and Black women business owners. In the workforce in general, it's important that we support the advancement of Black women businesses, that we make a pledge for sustainability, that we create equal access and pipelines that will allow for funding to come to these businesses, and also that we'll be able to have campaigns that are relevant, whether that is through print or media, that showcases and highlights these Black women businesses. Representation and equity creates opportunities for people to feel valued. And what it also does is opens the door for mentoring and attainability, if you will, for other Black women to follow suit. So it is really important that we, yes, are intentional, and then also that we create visibility for Black women business owners.
Very important addition to and clarification that we need to think about both at the same time in order to address the issue, and not gender or race alone. As well as when we talk about business, we are speaking about business, entrepreneurship and the corporate environment. So terrific points. And Candy, what are your thoughts on this comment or this question?
Thank you. I'd like to start off with Black women leaders should be trusted and respected, and we're not. We are not trusted to lead businesses, although we are leading the businesses. We're not respected, and that is because of so many different factors. But we are not only the leaders, but we are the creators of the businesses. As a matter of fact, prior to COVID, Black women leaders, according to Forbes magazine, was the leading group, not only racially, but ethnicity, for for leaders starting small businesses. And so it's important that we create a funding source for them, because of COVID, we've lost a lot of funding sources. Although a lot of people said, let's bring in money to Black organizations, that was a lot of talk. A lot of it did not reach us. So we definitely need funding to help us to grow and scale our businesses. We also need funding to help us to hire the community, and that includes the marketing and advertisement. So it is important that we trust us, that we have funding opportunities so that we can grow and scale, and that the community supports our business as well.
Thank you. Black women leaders need to be trusted and respected more.
Yes.
I add more because I am a mama's boy, and I trust and respect my mother and lots of Black female entrepreneurs, and I'm sure there's lots of folks out there like that. So I would underscore more. And as you pointed out, they are an engine that drives business creation as well as job creation. That's
Yes.
Terrific remarks. Let's zoom in a little bit here. And Robert, I'm going to bring this next question back to you. I think you all have painted a terrific sort of landscape that shows the intricacy and the complexity of what Black business and Black business leaders, both male and female, face. We've had some other occurrences over the last 18, 20 months that have changed the landscape. COVID-19, the subsequent shutdown, and the Black Lives Matter movement, chief among the factors that have made it unacceptable, if not impossible, for business to go back to business as usual. So how do we harness the power of this moment to ensure inclusivity, equity, and diversity are not just buzzwords, but become integral to operating a successful business?
Very good question. We have to take a step back and look at there are several roles that people can play. There's the corporate role, government, and then the entrepreneur themselves. On the corporate side of things, one of the things we've been doing is working with corporate partners to help them bring into realization their diversity and inclusion initiatives. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to live it. And one of the important things to do is make sure you have the appropriate people at the table who are going to deliver that message, and moreover, make it part of the business ethos of an organization. On the government side of things, I think there's some intentionality from both sides to help continue to drive the messaging. So for example, County of Los Angeles does $32 billion worth of spend. They have an aspirational goal of doing $4 billion with small businesses with an immediate goal of $1 billion. Average contract size $182,000 to $186,000. So when you look at that, helping people think through how you get to that table and take advantage of the business advocates, and both being intentional as a small business owner, but as well as those entities that are going to participate. And lastly, I think consumers who participate with these businesses also have to have a level of intentionality with their spending. Make it a point to identify who are these businesses in our community and resist the temptation to shop online. When you shop online, your product may come from somewhere abroad, but when you shop locally, you're employing someone. Your dollar is circulating in your community, which then makes it a stronger opportunity. So again, that word intentionality is very important for all parties involved. And I think if we continue down that path, we'll continue to see success within the ranks of our community.
Very terrific response. And again, that intentionality, very powerful. And looking at those three key actors in our economy. Let me turn back to Tiffany. You graduated from Norfolk State University, which is known as a historically Black university, and you're currently a member of its Alumni Association. What do you feel universities and alumni associations can do to further support and encourage Black businesses?
Yeah, so, coming from Norfolk State, I've had a wonderful opportunity to really connect with my alumni, past and present. And it's a great opportunity to just see the camaraderie that's amongst these historically Black colleges and universities. So HBCUs invite our Black-owned businesses to tailgating parties, often to homecomings when individuals are back, post-COVID. So I think that needs to happen across the board at all colleges and universities to bring some exposure to Black businesses, not only bringing that exposure to the local businesses that are Black, but having professors teach at the universities that are Black, to bring attention to those businesses and also bring an opportunity for the community to get involved with the schools. I believe the HBCUs are doing it across the board. I cannot say that all universities are doing it. And it would be very important for individuals that are coming up in those business programs to see organizations that often look like them, that are represented by a Black person that's just like them, as they're, working through their degree and looking to see where that next opportunity is, if they're going to start their own small business or go work for a Fortune 500 company. Having that representation is very important.
Terrific. So raising the flag, increasing the visibility both where they are and in new locations as well, and encouraging the young folks. That's very powerful stuff. And let me turn now to Candy. You sent a quote in to the LA Business Journal where you asked, "Black business matters, but is it respected?" What do you mean by that?
Thank you so much for that question. I say that because it's true that most Black businesses aren't respected. Lending institutions will not fund Black businesses the way they should and the way they need to be funded, so that we are able to provide not only a living wage to our employees, but also very often when a nonprofit or a small business starts a business, they don't have enough money for marketing, for advertisement, for scaling up, sometimes for even product, and definitely not to fund a salary for the owner. And so if we are going to have a small business or a Black business, a Black small business or nonprofit, it is important that we provide the resources and the tools so that that business can be sustainable. Because once that business is sustainable, it is going to benefit the entire community, and that's the entire community at large. Also, you have some people who won't shop Black business, and they'll say, well, they don't do as good a job, or they will ask us to be mediocre. We are not mediocre. We do not want to come in and provide half of a product or half of a service. And funding is essential to that, as well as consumers are essential to that. Another thing that happens is you'll often have people that will come in and ask us for a discount. They don't go anywhere else and ask for a discount, except for in communities of color. So it's important that you understand that there's a price point that we have to pay, and there's also a price point that we have to earn in order to continue to grow our business and provide for our families and our employees.
So what I'm hearing is your actions speak so loud, I can't hear your words. You need to show me both in the resources, in how you spend your dollars, and how you support us. And then we'll know that Black business is respected.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very good. Well, in those three questions, you've laid out a pretty multi-layered context and teased apart some of the richness in today's topic. In the next few questions, we're going to explore some of the interplay between Black businesses and the key elements of the context that you all just highlighted for us. I'm going to come back to Robert. And in fact, you've done some of this speaking about government and corporate, but let me frame the question so that everyone can follow the discussion. How do different types of businesses, not-for-profit, financial corporations, philanthropic institutions, how do they work together to mentor the next generation of Black leaders in a cohesive direction to ensure that we always have a seat at the table?
It's interesting because rather than having a seat at the table in years past, we've actually had a seat on the menu. And that's come in the form of our labor, being the first in, first out during cutbacks or last in, first out. We've got to curb that activity. When I think about how we have a seat at the table, one of the things we have to look at is we need to create our own table, first of all. And then secondly, for the table we're looking to have a seat at, businesses have to take the responsibility to build on their banking relationships and then look at the marketplace. Recently, I had a conversation with Brian Grant over at City National Bank and Larry Reed at Comerica. We were talking about how can we integrate the thinking of small businesses in the Black community to think more broadly and be more relevant. And the conversation led down a path of we have to look at, this is how I look at it. We've got to partner with academia and look at the top 5 or 10 industries, then break them apart and look at the value streams in those industries and how we feed people into those value streams. So for example, there was a show with The Profit where they looked at the cannabis industry from the grower to the end user. And I identified 3 key businesses in that were bankable: security, a laboratory, and packaging. So figuring that out, and then now if I wanted to get in that business, those are 3 businesses that I would probably target to go. We could do that for aerospace, we could do that for construction, we could do that for aviation. When we look at the fact that, for example, in aviation, we have a need for 230 or 35,000 pilots, 750,000 aircraft mechanics over the next 13 years because of mandatory retirements. How does that equate into small business? And then build an infrastructure where those ideas could begin to come into play and we feed people into those business models. So whatever you are in business today, I think it was Harvard Business Review that says every 5 years, you should create an allied business. And as you build that allied business, that's going to help you stay relevant to the times, to grow your business, but moreover, to be able to take advantage of new emerging opportunities. The greatest emerging opportunity we experienced during the pandemic was 2 things. Disaster preparedness was one of them, and actually getting into production of Zoom meetings and all of the other platforms where people are using to have meeting places. So we have a whole new group of production people. And that's how you begin to look at being relevant for the future.
Terrific. Again, being intentional both in educating and building on the relationships you have, but also in finding opportunities, both where they are sort of manifest, forced retirement in aviation, and where they may not be so obvious, a pandemic, a surprise event.
Exactly.
Appreciate that comment. Let's take a look at another lens, the media. So Tiffany, you are a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. Do you feel that the media in general has done a good job in telling the story of Black business and why it matters? And if not, what can be done to change what they do? And what should they be doing?
Over the last year, I would say, obviously, we can all attest that there has been more media coverage following the George Floyd case and Black Lives Matter. But overall, on a national scale, you get more attention. But when you get granular on a local grassroots level, local media does not always cover the Black small businesses that need support. And so 92% of Black businesses don't really employ anyone. But 8% of them businesses employ less than 10%. And what's the problem here is that there's just not a pipeline. There's no funding sources. They don't have the means and the ability to even hire other individuals that look like them to keep a sustainability going in that community. So local media can absolutely do a lot better. They could, highlight segments about Black business owners, have, a restaurant come and do a package on their restaurant about a popular dish that they may have. Even if there's someone that makes jewelry, you can have them showcase their work. There are definitely a lot of avenues and opportunities with local media supporting small businesses that I believe still needs to happen and can happen.
Very good. The highlighting and featuring them, that's news also. And it's at the local level where there's a lot more progress that can be made. Candy, something that's sort of come up in the other comments, but let me give you a shot to address it head on. What is a socially conscious consumer and entrepreneur?
A socially conscious consumer is someone who intentionally looks to find and do business with Black businesses and Black women business. And that is really important because there are some Black businesses that everyone knows, and they are well received. They have great services, but there are a lot of small businesses. And please understand that a nonprofit is also a business. And very often the smaller businesses and the smaller nonprofits are looked over, and everyone wants to work with the larger business. Well, how did the larger business get to be a larger business? They started off small and people invested in them. So we need the community to invest in small Black-owned businesses, Black-owned women businesses, and intentionally go in and shop, support, donate, and also, again, don't ask for a discount. Don't ask why our prices are so high. We would like our providers and our supporters and also the business community to know that we need an equity. Yes, we need equity in pricing. So our prices there shouldn't be a price for one group of people and a higher price for another group of people because they're small owned business. Also for the consumer, it's important that they know that the business is there to support the community. So if you are supporting us, then we're able to support the community. And for a socially conscious entrepreneur, we are in the community, supporting the community. We are of the community. We live, work, and worship in the community, and we care about the community. I've been in some places that the stores, the businesses look great and they're well taken care of. And there's some people that will just throw up a business, and that is not acceptable. Our business must be pleasing to the eye and have great customer service. And most Black-owned businesses and women-owned businesses do exactly that. Again, it is really about how do we support? How do you invest in? And how are you donating your money or purchasing supplies? As Robert said earlier, are we spending all our money on Amazon, or are we intentionally going to find a Black-owned business in our community so that we can continue to build up our community?
Intentionally seeking to support our Black-owned, our Black woman-owned businesses, yes. Recognizing that business is business, whether it's being conducted by a Black entrepreneur or not-for-profit, and businesses are businesses that have certain level of costs and need to earn a certain margin.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you.
Shifting the lens one more time to the workforce. Robert, as the work from home and gig economy kept workers in their own individual silos, how can businesses build a cohesive brand and keep a diverse workforce invested and engaged in creating meaningful social change?
There's a lot to unpack there. Let's just start by saying a diverse workforce equals diverse dollars. And at the end of the day, money doesn't know where it came from, but you have to pivot your business so that you could take full advantage of every potential consumer, and moreover, the consumers within the Black community. When we consider, let me give you a deeper why before I get to some of the answers to this. When we consider the fact that McKinsey came out with a report last year that talked about 4.3 million jobs in the African American community will be lost to artificial intelligence by 2030, we are going to be forced to become entrepreneurs in a way like we've never had. although we've seen a surge in entrepreneurship with opportunity startups as a result of the pandemic just fast-tracked that 4.3 million number. When we look at the fact that the gig economy, so we know, and this has probably been emerging over the last 10 years, that long-term employment in most industries, not all, but definitely most, is no longer existent. And so there are a lot of new people, young people coming into the workforce, or even those who are mid-career and transition, that really are embracing the concept of being an independent contractor and participating in the gig economy. I'm currently the co-chair of the Independent Professionals Association, which is an association that deals with independent contractors. And one of the things we are targeting is helping people understand the importance of that role. When AB 5 kicked in, a number of people during the pandemic lost their opportunities as entrepreneurs because you now had to hire them as employees, many of whom didn't want to work as employees. So we have to understand what this new workforce is, how it fits into our business ethos, and then leverage it for how we brand to become best-in-class employers by having such a flexible workforce. And then, of course, adding cause marketing to what we do. Imagine being a business where you could hire women that can work from home as independent contractors or in the gig economy while taking care of their families and doing other things that are important to them. I speak to that because that's exactly what my wife does with people that work with her around the country. And then there's a level of authenticity. We have to make sure that those businesses that get started up, that those people that come into the African-American community because they recognize there is true spending power here, that you're authentic about your approach, that corporations are authentic about bringing individuals into their diversity and inclusion meetings. I just had a meeting with one of the entertainment industry producers about some work we're going to be doing recently before this call, and just the level of intentionality that they had in approaching me and how authentic they were about trying to get our people behind the camera and in front of some of the other opportunities within the industry. So again, we have to make sure that we drive that. And moreover, I want to go back to what I said about a strong PR campaign. In order to drive your business, if you don't have marketing dollars, this is where cause marketing is impactful. Linking your business to something in your community that solves a problem, and not just, fixing a plate of food or what have you, but literally be seen as someone who helps solve a problem in your community. And I believe that people will align with that. I know I do it on a regular basis. One of the things I'm very intentional about is looking for businesses that also put their money where their mouth is and their actions behind the community to make sure that everyone has a key role to participate. And then, of course, for those major players that come into our community and benefit, re-looking at public policy measures. For example, we know that banks have to meet CRA requirements. Maybe we need to look at industries like Big Pharma, who makes millions of dollars off the backs of Black people with our health concerns, and then those dollars go into other non-Black communities that are middle class and upper middle class. Maybe we need a CRA for pharma to drive revenue and dollars to support businesses and have access to capital. So these are the kinds of things that we have to do as policymakers, as nonprofits, to drive that. And then the people who are on the ground with the startup businesses, whether it's an opportunity business and figuring out how to make it relevant. And then also having honesty within your business to say, do I have a real business or is this a hobby business? And not treat a hobby business like it's real. If you're going to be willing to pay the dues, be willing to put in the time and make it successful and build the relationships that you need. I think that's how we do it.
Pretty simple. No, it was it's quite a instructive response, and we are running a bit short on time. But this notion of a CRA for Big Pharma is very intriguing, and the idea that we're already being moved in a direction where, as a result of automation, in addition to the pandemic, and the end of long-term employment, will be in a position where entrepreneurship will become all the more important, and the essential notion around capitalism of solving a problem. But in our case, doing that, particularly with a cause marketing sort of angle on it, all very powerful things for all of us to consider, whether we are burgeoning entrepreneurs or policymakers or just old hands trying to help the next generation come along. We are running short of time, so we're going to do the final few questions in rapid fire. You were prepared for this in advance, so we're going to look for 30-second answers or less. Candy, you are first at bat. Speaking of the future, how do we best support our youth to be entrepreneurs?
We hire our youth, we mentor our youth, and we train our youth. And we don't tell them to be mediocre or to just settle. Very often our youth are told that, and our youth have brilliant minds. We have been working, our organization, Positive Results Center, has been training youth for the last 25 years. And we will engage a youth, train them. They could be as young as 12 years old. And what we are focusing on is violence prevention and trauma awareness. And once we train them, we then train them to train the community. And we also pay them. Very often people are asking our youth to show up without benefit of salary, without benefit of experience. So let's make sure that we are training our youth, giving them the skills and the tools that they need to be successful, and then compensating them for their efforts.
Hire, train, compensate them properly. Tiffany, what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, we have to invest in our youth, and that's where it starts, because they are going to be our tomorrow. And if we start developing and training them now, then they'll have an equal playing field where they could, provide the same level of support and leadership to the individuals that come behind them. So it's very important that we make sure we're equipped in our youth to be prepared to be business owners and to be leaders in corporate America.
And Robert, picking up on that business ownership comment, is there anything that you would suggest that Black business owners do, in particular, leave a legacy for our future generations?
Oh, absolutely. I think first and foremost, you have to identify upfront who in your family expresses an interest in continuing with the business. Harvard Business Review says that you have to remain fast, flat, and flexible. That means change with the times to stay relevant. You have to be adaptable and avoid the top three killers of small businesses as I see them. That's stagnation. We've always done it this way. Complacency. Don't become too comfortable. And then lastly, resistance to change. You must live your life as if every day is changing, because every day does change. If you don't believe me, everyone on this call at one point of their life never used email, never used a smartphone. That came into play in the last 10 years. So when we see how quickly things have evolved, how the fact that this cell phone has more power in it than the original computer system that filled a room that launched the initial space travel, then that tells you change is imminent. And with that kind of change, we have to make sure that we continue to move forward. And lastly, I want to go back to the youth piece. We have to make sure that we find the passion in our young people, give them the resources they need, and then exploit the hell out of it.
Fast, flat, and flexible. As we used to say, making a way out of no way. And with that, thank you, panel. Thank you, Tiffany, Candy, Robert. And back over to you, Josh.
Well, thank you so much for the moderation, Robert. I think that was such an interesting panel. For me, the one word takeaway was intentionality. So thank you for putting that out there. And I think it's a great reminder for us all. Thank you to our three panelists as well, Tiffany, Candy, and Robert. I want to remind you that Monday's print and digital versions of the LA Business Journal are going to be highlighting this event and this discussion. Additionally, for those that you'd like to send it out to, if you know anybody that would be interested in the conversation, the content here, there will be a recorded version of this entire program available on labusinessjournal.com come Monday. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. Let's continue the conversation, and we look forward to hosting you again soon. Thank you.